It's time for another episode of The Sean Tappet Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, digging into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my special guest is Michael Gilmore, and we're going to be talking about his brand new book, The Little Book of Zen Money, A Simple Path to Financial Peace of Mind. Michael, it is truly an honor, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Really nice to meet you. Nice to talk to someone on the other side of the world. It's always good fun.
Yes, and like we said before we got into the interview, I'm glad to know things will still be okay, 12, 13 hours into the future. This is the first time you and I are meeting as we record this conversation. I know you're going to be brand new to a lot of my audience, so let's kick this off by having you share a little bit of the Michael Gilmore origin story. Tell us about your superpowers, your special abilities for this person meeting you for the first time. Give them some context. What do they need to know?
Thanks very much. Yeah. So as you may hear by my accent, I'm British, and I've lived, however, in Asia, bits of Asia for 30 years, and I've been working in finance for 25 of those years. But I was originally a writer. I was working in the creative industries, and I was hired by an investment bank to come in and edit their work. And I said, well, I'd like to do a bit more than editing. Could I try and be an analyst as well? And they agreed, because I was asking to do two jobs rather than just the one. And basically, they threw me in the deep end. And this was 25 years ago. And I was a bit worried, and I went and bought every book, because this was before the internet, so I had to buy books. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, I realized, hold on, this finance stuff is a lot easier than people were making out, or that I'd been scared it had been. Like all of us, before we're in finance, we all worry that it's much more complicated and we're not going to understand it, and we're put off by so many different jargon terms and the way they behave. And 2, 3 weeks in, I think because I needed to do it, there was like a real need, and I didn't do anything else for 2, 3 weeks. I was like, okay, this is easier than I thought. And then second thought was, this is more powerful than I thought. I realized I'd been messing up. I was like maybe 28, 29 years old. I had debt. I just got married. My money was in no kind of shape. And I was like, okay, this has got to change. I'm going to change what I do. So I had this sort of just number one, it's easier than I thought. Number two, it's more powerful than I thought. And at that next moment, I became incredibly angry. I was just furious. It's like, how did no one teach this to me? I'd spent 15 years in full-time education. I did postgraduate research, and no one ever bothered to talk to me about, okay, when you leave school, you're going to have this thing called money. You're going to have to get it in. It's going to have to go out. You could save it. You can invest it. You can do things with it. And if you do it wrong, it'll mess up your life. And if you do it right, it'll change your life. And I was just angry. And it sat with me. And that anger sat until I could do something about it. And then maybe 10, 12 years ago, I was here in Singapore. And there's a lot of migrant workers here in Singapore. And come from the Philippines, they come from Indonesia, they come from Bangladesh. And they come here to make more money so they can send it home and so they can save. They're trying to drag their own families out of poverty. And I thought, well, this is a great place to start talking to people about financial literacy and take the things I've learned in the finance industry and the psychology of these things and work with them on it. And that really is what led to the book. I mean, that book was, it actually directly led to the book, because I wrote a handbook for those migrant workers that the publishers Wiley found out about through a friend of a friend. And they wanted that book. They wanted that journal. And I said, you can't have it because I give it away. This just gets given away to migrant workers. And you won't let me give away a book. And so they said, well, do you have another book? And I'd written a book for my daughter at that point, which is called Happy Ever After, because I was working with these migrant workers and realizing that my own daughter wasn't learning this stuff in school. Another 30 years later, that still hadn't been addressed. Most places in the world still not talking about money. So I wrote a book for my daughter, and that was all ready to go. So I gave that to Wiley. And then once that one had gone, they said, well, have you got another one? I said, well, not off the top of my head. They said, well, would you like? Because there's this series of book called The Little Book, Big Profit series that Wiley does. And when I looked at that series, I thought that rings a bell. I said, well, hold on. Jack Bogle wrote one of those. Aswath Damodaran wrote one of those. Some of the great luminaries, Mark Mobius, the guy who almost invented emerging markets, he wrote one of those. I was like, they're asking me to write one of these? Like, you don't say no to that, right? So I said, yeah, okay, just give me some time to think about it. And as I was thinking about it, when we work on financial literacy and on financial education, we very quickly realized the finance is easy. it's the person that's difficult. Humans are complicated. Money's easy. I thought, well, what's the biggest? As I've written a book already for the smallest market in the world, my own daughter, that was one person I was writing for. So what's the biggest? And I think it's people who get stressed about money. And that really set up for me, okay, how am I going to approach that? And I thought, well, what's the opposite of stress? I mean, it's Zen. There's idea, and there are a few things in the book where it sort of leads on into that a little bit further, but it's meditation, it's Zen, and how can we approach money in a calm way and learn about it in a calm way. And that's what led to that book.
Well, I'm glad you took the chance to write the journal or the $1,000 journal. I mean, I always love as a guy who works in publishing. So many books have these crazy origin stories. Well, it started with a blog post or a podcast episode. I had this thing I was passionate about, and somebody found it, and they said, "Oh my gosh, we need to do that." So that's a fun journey to get to this book coming into the market, and then just the idea that you knew some of the other authors, and you had to wrestle with you want me to write and be a part of that. Like, did you read my bio? Do you know who I am? Oh, I love that.
Right?
That's fun.
Jack Bogle. In so many ways, Jack Bogle has done more for financial inclusion than anyone else in the history of the planet. I mean, by creating those index funds, he's enabled people. We can talk to people about, the amount of compound return you can get over a long period of time. And people say, oh, but what about the fees? And it's like, no, Jack Bogle cut those fees all on his own. Jack Bogle cut those fees and drove that down. So to have my book standing alongside his in the series, I mean, it's it was never one of my goals. It's too high to have ever been a goal. I could never have had that as a goal. So it's quite an amazing thing for me to say.
Well, and what I love about this, and this is honestly what I'm always looking for in almost every interview, is this related to a problem the author has wrestled with or had in their own life? And, do they apply these principles? And I love that you saw your daughter had the same problem that you had growing up, that she didn't get a financial education. You saw the migrant workers didn't have a financial education. And that always says to me, this is transferable to whoever in the audience happens to pick up the book. I'm curious in terms of audience, what did you have to think through to go, okay, I did this book with my daughter. I did the journal for the migrant workers. What did you have to wrestle with a bit in your head to think, okay, I'm shifting this content for a completely different audience? What did that look like?
Yeah, in many ways, because I was aiming so big, I wasn't addressing a single person anymore. If I was, it was me. And the idea that how do I think through my own thought processes about money and the way I think about money and where it's important and how we can apply it, and the methods for actually resisting the constant temptation, right? The constant distractions, and how we can bring ourselves back onto the path. And although it's called the Little Book of Zen Money, that the really important part of the title is the second part, the simple path. Because that's why people are so stressed about money, and is where I had got wrong so many times before I sort of really understood money. Is we start halfway along a path, and I don't know what it's like where you are in the US, but I grew up in the Cotswolds in the UK, and a country path in the UK is across a field, and you get on the path and you cross over like a wall or through a hedge or something like that. And then you look across the field and you can see the path. And you can see the path in front of you because it's where people have trod before. But the grass is just basically bending over a little bit. That's all. It just shines back at you a little bit different. If you come at that path from the side, you cannot see it. It's invisible. And so you will never find that path if you walk in it from the side. But as long as you're on the path, you can see it right ahead of you the whole way. And you can't lose it. And that to me was what I was trying to do with this book. Is that, okay, let's get on the path at the beginning. What is money? Who are we? Are we, how do we think? How is money affecting us? Where should we get away from that? How can we start on the simplest, smallest steps and just see that path right ahead of us? And that was what was really the goal with this, is that let's take those simple, small steps and feel confident that we're on the path. And so that's what I was thinking through, is that person on that journey.
One of the things I'd love to have you speak to is kind of that idea of what is money. In getting ready for the interview, I listened to some other interviews that you did, and just that idea of that money is almost a store of time and energy, or it takes time and energy to create money. I don't know that I've ever quite thought of money about like in that exact way, and like shifting the perspective of what we think about money, what it is. There's a different potentiality in there if we're shifting how we look at it, how do we relate to that? Why is it important to shift our understanding of what money is, what it's for?
Because if we don't actually look at it coldly, um, humans, we're emotional animals, and as a result, we tend to attach emotions to things that don't have emotions back to us, that they don't need those emotions. And unfortunately, we wrap emotions around money. If we haven't learned exactly what it is, if you can learn, this is time and energy, time you put in, energy you put in, creativity you put in, inspiration you put in, all kinds of things that you can put into getting this money, and you get it, and then you get it back when you buy something. And the reason it's so important to understand that that's what we put in and that's what we get back. This is what's going on here. Now, why that's important is because at some point you won't have the time and the energy to put into getting more money. So therefore you need to save some of that time and energy, hopefully invest some of that time and energy into something that makes more time and energy than you put in the first place, so that you can get more out. And that's really all we're doing when we save and invest. And this is the problem with some of the ways that, let's say, traditional financiers talk. If you read a book by let's say a lot of traditional financiers, they're just into money. It's a score. It's a game. They want to get the biggest score they can because that proves they've won. That does nothing for you and me and the average person in the street. We're not playing their game. What we need to learn is, okay, this is why I save. I save because of this. I invest because of this. I need to get more out of this. The numbers aren't as important as what I get out of it later. And that's why it's so important to understand what you're putting in and then what you're getting out. And it's never emotions and it's never a score and it's never defining who you are. It's just making sure you are on that path and you're doing the right thing.
And I want to jump back to the book with your daughter, have or for your daughter, Happy Ever After. Financial freedom isn't a fairy tale. I heard you talk in another interview that your daughter is a creative, and honestly, my whole audience and the people I influence largely are creatives, authors, people who speak and influence for a living. In terms of creatives and their relationship to money, like what was your motivation to help your daughter? I guess I'd love to have you share a little bit of that story because I think my audience will really relate to that.
Well, so I mean, so before she went off to college, and part of the reason for writing it was she was heading off, and I was only going to have maybe. So we're in Singapore. She was going to go to the UK for university. So I thought, I'm only going to see her really for another year. She was 17 years old, and I thought, okay, I've got to prep this. When she was in university, she was writing plays. They got performed in the Edinburgh Festival. She was writing poetry. I mean, I looked at her and thought, okay, who needs to learn about money more? Is it people that work in finance that are going to get paid a lot? Is it lawyers who get paid a lot? Or is it people who are going to do creative work and maybe make some money occasionally and maybe maybe not, and have to make sure they kind of last between those times? And they've got to really understand money. And let's go back to, say, someone like Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a businessman. He saved up and he bought a theater, or bought a share in a theater to make sure his plays could be put on. He was a businessman. There's nothing wrong with being a creative business person, but unfortunately, those two worlds have kind of been split apart for whatever reason. But also, secondly, if you're in that kind of artistic stream, you're not learning the maths and the numbers and the finances you need to learn. So that's why I thought, okay, look at my daughter and said, okay, let's start the very beginning. I didn't want to get into entrepreneurship because I think there's a very big danger in people learning entrepreneurship before they've learned personal finance. And it's actually how I didn't start out wanting to teach migrant workers personal finance. I wanted to teach them entrepreneurship. And I was in the room with them and I saw a lot of glazed looks on their face. I was like, am I teaching this badly? And I realized that none of them were saving money. And I was like, I cannot teach you to be an entrepreneur if you're not saving. There's just no point. You've got to learn. This money is profit. This gets tucked away. And if you can't learn that in your personal life, you can't learn that in your business. So I didn't move even to there with my daughter. I was just like, okay, let's get money. If you know that money has to get tucked away, and then get invested, and then you can be an entrepreneur later in life. But that was really the thought process: is let's get the basics sorted. So, and I have to say, before we leave talking about this, that book, I finished it before she went to college. It was published when she was in college, but she's since finished college. She started work, and she's saved half or more than half of every monthly salary she's had ever since. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most successful book in history. Had a target market of 1, and she's doing exactly what I wanted her to do, and exactly what she wants to do. She read it and she got it, and she went, "Okay, that's what I want to do." I want to be financially secure by the time I'm 40. I know what I need to do, exactly what I have to do. I have to start now, and so she's done it.
I love that you wrote that for an audience of 1, and that audience member has been successful. That's a wonderful success story.
Yeah.
In terms of working in the publishing space, I can say it's challenging to find a niche, but if you combine one thing with another in a way that's unique and special, you often have a successful project on your hands. So you're uh, combining mindfulness with money. I'd love to hear for you, just on a kind of broad level, how has mindfulness been important to you through the years? And then uh, connecting that with money, what was that like to go, okay, I need to bring these two together in a way that's going to be transferable and helpful to the journey you're going to
Mm.
take somebody on in this book?
Yeah. So, I mean, I I kind of think I'm a natural meditator. I think my wife thinks I'm a daydreamer, and they're not the same thing. Um, we can argue about that. But yeah, I'm very happy to be left on my own in a room for 12 hours, and I can just sit there and go through thoughts, or not go through thoughts, depending. So it's something I enjoy doing anyway. So that, and I've always had a little bit of a love affair with Zen, minimalism, and Japan. I'm heading to Japan in 2 days, and I haven't been since before the coronavirus. So I'm very excited. Yeah. So anyway, that's an aside. In terms of how to look at money in a Zen way and how to use very simple kind of meditative steps, there's quite a few things. I mean, one of the things we talk about quite a bit in the book is actually the common ground between tracking your spending, which sounds like the least like funky Zen thing you could do, and journaling. And it's actually, but who are you? Do you know who you are? Do you know how you spend money? Can you look at yourself coldly in the mirror? Because there's nothing. I mean, I think there's a lot of temptation, maybe by people who want to think they're good at meditation or want to think they're into it, that it's almost a distraction. There's just another form of distraction. And my favorite description of Zen is by the philosopher Alan Watt, who said that it's seeing reality directly. Look at yourself as you are. And this is where we go back to what's money. It's time and energy. This is what it is. It's not emotion. It's not status. It is time and energy. And then, okay, well, let's take that a step further. How much am I spending? No one knows unless they write it down. It's just no one. I mean, it's like if you spend on 10 things in a week, you are going to remember 5 of them if you try, maybe 6. It's like, it's always a rule. You can't remember 10 things out of 10. None of us can. It's like, 7 tops, unless you write it down. And if you don't write it down, you're guessing where your money goes. And if you're guessing where your money goes, you can never later optimize for how you've spent it. And this just goes for anyone at any time. So to actually track, I see as this combination of just honesty and journaling and sitting down and writing, say, what did I spend on? What did I spend on? What did I spend on? What did I do? So that's one big part of it where we see that crossover. The second part of sort of journaling with money is the exercise of writing down and really getting into it, like when you are happiest, what has made you happiest, almost like a happiness audit. And it's fun to do, and it's great to remember those times. But then to also remember, okay, when were the most expensive times, and were they the same? Because one of the things that frustrates me when I wrote Happy Ever After, and then with the book with the migrant workers, is the people that will say, "But hold on, I want to be happy now. I want to enjoy my life now. I don't want to just save, save, save. And so you think money and enjoyment are exactly the same thing, because that's what you're saying. And I said, I don't find that the same thing at all. I think the least unhappy meal I've ever had was the most expensive. Some of the happiest times I have are absolutely free. And if you want to optimize, you can say, okay, now I've tracked my spending. I'm not happy with this. I'm happy with that. These are the times I'm happiest. Some of these are really cheap and free. I can do those more. And one of my favorite ones is go for a walk. I mean, it's just the easiest, right? Sorry, I was getting a tickle in my throat. But going for a walk is free. It is fun. It is zen. I don't think anyone goes for too many walks. That's how I know it's like the easiest thing to advise. And it's those are where all those, there's the wonderful books by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen Buddhist monk who sadly died last year or the year before. But he has a book, How to Walk. And you can break it down into so complicated. There's simple things, but there is a process there. And that to me, and you can go for a walk and think, okay, what am I going to do with my money? How am I going to work this through if I need to think about it a little bit more deeply? And I think all those processes come together and we just address them directly. And that was what to me was so interesting about the book, was saying, okay, let's not talk about money as the game where we're just going to become billionaires. And also, let's not do meditation and mindfulness in the way of let's close ourselves off from the world and imagine that everything's okay. Let's actually combine those two and say, let's approach it realistically. Let's track, let's journal, let's budget, let's walk, let's breathe, let's do things that make us feel better while we're actually on this path to having better finances. And that was really where we tried to incorporate these things.
And I could see somebody being, although it'll be uncomfortable at first, being more comfortable with, tracking, writing down what they're spending, kind of thinking through the things that have made them happy. I think one area that just scares people, because if it wasn't a part of their growing up or their education, this idea of investing, it just seems crazy and overwhelming. So in terms of for the reader who they have no context, no grid for investing, what are some of the things you really want them to know about investing responsibly and just why they don't necessarily need to be crazy scared about it?
Yeah, very important. Very good question. I mean, there is one of the least known cognitive biases. So people talk about cognitive biases like confirmation bias, selection bias, survivor bias. One of the ones that's least well known is zero risk fallacy. And zero risk fallacy is the belief that there is such a thing as zero risk, which because it doesn't exist. The moment to maintain the path metaphor, the moment you've got a choice between two paths in front of you, the one you don't choose is your risk, and you never know what it is. You can't go down both of them. It's not possible. So you're always exposed to that thing not happening. And the problem with zero risk fallacy is people think that they shouldn't, they don't want to lose money, but you're not. Your assets have gone up in price or they've gone down in price, right? So let's say if you invested in the S&P 500 beginning of this year, it has not been a fun year. But at the beginning of this year, let's say your stake in the S&P 500 was 0.00001% of the American economy. There was your little bit of money in it. It still is. It hasn't changed. You've still got that stake in the American economy. It's still there. The assets have all gone up. If you sell it, you can still buy exactly the same amount of assets in there. And okay, so one of the goals long term is that you are able to invest in those assets well, and you can buy other assets that have maybe not done so well, or you can buy other things. But people get essentially what you should be doing when you invest is taking that time and energy you've got and putting it into income earning assets that are reflective of the economy as a whole. Because you don't want your cash to sit as paper. You want your cash to be in the economy. So zero is the wrong risk baseline, because making you think all kinds of wrong thoughts about it. Your risk baseline is GDP plus inflation with plus minus swings. And unfortunately, now that's probably said a little bit too quickly, but I think we all know that's inherently true. We want our money to grow roughly ideally a little bit more than the economy. If a little bit less, okay, we can handle it, but we don't want it to be zero. Zero is just a number and is irrelevant in this occasion. And that's why you have to invest, because if you don't, you're getting zero returns, which are going to underperform every year apart from this one, in which you'd have done really well. But equally, the other thing to remember is if you start investing early, like my daughter did invest. She invested through last year. She's experienced this year. She's young, so she bought some tech stocks. So that's maybe not done as well as she'd have hoped. And she's looking at me saying, "Why don't you give me any advice?" And I was like, "That's not how you learn." But she also bought some very sort of green stocks, and they've actually done quite well. Because she's young, right? So she wants green and she wants tech. Now, she said, but these have lost money. So no, they haven't. They've just gone down. Those assets have gone down. And you know what? You're 24. This is a great time to buy some more, because the only time this really, really hurts you, this kind of crash, is in like the 2 years before you retire. At any other time, they'll go back up again, and you can invest into this and buy more, and it'll go back up. It's really, this kind of crash is very, very bad for people. A lot of people right now who are retiring, and it's going to hurt them. And so I don't want to make light of it, because it is the worst time to experience a crash. But for most other people, it's irrelevant. I mean, it doesn't sound it, but literally, let's say for me, I'm 50, I've been investing since I was 30. Maybe I'll start taking out the money when I'm 70. What happens in between now and then doesn't matter. Because it's not when I'm going to take the money out. It's just feedback. It's just information. It's not actually what's relevant to me. And so I do desperately feel for the people about to retire, or who have just retired. But everyone else, this is a great moment. And that's where I think, there is unfortunately one of the problems with the media is there's so much noise and so much information, with people who've never had a proper education in what it actually means, including lots of the journalists. I should add.
Yeah, I think everybody wants the microwave fix or the quick return, and nobody wants to have the crock pot scenario going on. I think the reality we need to always remember is it takes risk to realize and experience rewards. If we take no risk at that kind of zero level, you're not going to get any return. There's always some level of risk to get to something that's more substantial or more interesting.
There's just no such thing as no risk.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't exist. I mean, unfortunately, we just have to. It's just something that needs to be completely wiped away. Your currency can go wrong, right? I mean, you can have it in anything. There's just always some form of risk, and what you have to do is, once you take that on board, you can look and say, okay, who am I? What's an appropriate risk for me? But again, this is where we come back to Zen. Who am I? Let's look at ourselves directly. Where do I spend money? What do I need? What do I want? Let's understand ourselves, because that's more important. It's us that's going to be spending the money in the end, not the person I'm competing with to make more money. Doesn't matter what they invest in. They need what they need. I need to do what I need to do. And if we can, that's where this really sense of understanding and being calm and being Zen about it is much more important.
Well, I think that's really the key is, as you are developing confidence and literacy on this topic, you can make calculated risks, you can take educated risks, and you're not just shooting in the dark or taking advice from the latest clickbait YouTube video that has this hot new thing that you need to take action on today, or you're absolutely going to miss out. One last thing I always like to do before we wrap an interview is just kind of get for you as the author, like, what's success with this book? Somebody takes the time, they go through the exercises. On the other end of that journey, like, how do you hope they've been shifted? How do you hope their life is different? Like, what's success for the reader after they go through this journey?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sean. Thanks. To me, it's actually just someone who feels calm and more confident about what they're doing. That's prepared to understand things more. But to your point that you just made, not so that they just think, okay, now I'm confident I can buy the thing that the guy on YouTube was saying to me to buy. It's about understanding, who they are and the steps they can take. But to me, I often refer to, if you look at it like a ladder, so many of the books on finance are, rungs 3 to 10. And so few of the books are how do we get off the ground? And I just want people to feel more comfortable about getting off the ground. That was the book for my daughter and anyone her age, Happy Ever After. That was what that was about. To someone who's like maybe like a teenager and just approaching them and that information. And for Zen Money, it's really about, okay, well, I'm an adult. I feel more stressed about money than I want to. How can I just take some very, very simple steps and understand why those might work? And that someone who can feel that and start thinking about money in a slightly different way, a more confident way, in a calmer way, that would be wonderful.
And I want to make sure we don't miss out on this. You founded the Money Awareness and Inclusion Awards. Who do you really want to recognize, and why was that important to you?
Yeah, that was actually it was the realization. The more work you do on sort of financial education, you realize that there's thousands of people working on it around the world, and there's no connectivity between them. Yeah, there's sort of there's a little bit, but really not enough. And that means that a lot of people, the book I wrote for my daughter, I maybe there would have been a better book out there that I could just have bought if I could knew where it was. And all these kinds of things, I see lots of people out there just working really, really hard to try and help the people around them understand money better. And yet, no one's talking about what they are. So the awards were really this idea of what if we can connect everyone? What if we can find the best ideas out there being done? Can we speed this up? Because that, to me, this is a tragedy that we're not learning this globally. I mean, the US is probably better than any other country in the world about this, but still, it's a third of Americans, more than a third. It's actually like 40% of Americans are viewed as being financially illiterate. And you're ahead of most of the rest of the planet on this. And it's just like, this is criminal. This should not be the case. This is not complex stuff. We should be able to teach it, and our kids should be able to learn it. They should all be walking out of school thinking, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm going to do with my money. I know how to behave. And it's just, and my goal is to really try to work on a way that accelerates that. Now, obviously, I'd love to be, a billionaire, and then I could just solve it like that. Right? Is I'm not. So what I can do is, okay, what's the biggest impact thing I can do? And I thought, well, some awards. Everyone likes an award. Spread of what's out there. I've some amazing people have agreed to be judges. So last year we had the deputy editor of the Financial Times was a judge. We had leading academics that are judges. We got some different academics this year that are coming back to judge the awards. But the Patrick Jenkins from the Financial Times, he commented that he works on a charity in the UK that has a particular issue that they were trying to solve. And he said he thinks there's a charity, or not a charity, but a government organization in Peru that is working on that exact issue and seems to have found a solution. So you go from London, well, it's actually from Manchester to Peru. This may be the solution. And it's like, and because we have these awards, and I think, well, that's just one in our first year. And that's really what I hope these awards can do, is really just connect and encourage and accelerate this whole process. So, there are less kids like my daughter who need a dad to write a book for them. Then maybe the schools actually start doing it for us.
Well, I think that's one of the beauty or beautiful things about this is it's breaking cycles of ignorance or lack of awareness. And if you can start
Mhm.
tackling that in a generation, my assumption is, when those folks, get on with life and have kids, how they teach their kids to relate to money, how they see their parents
Yeah.
modeling that, it's going to look different. So someone is just giving people an opportunity to break generational cycles. So I
Yeah.
love that. I love that opportunity for empowerment and that sort of a shift. Michael, in terms of people connecting with you, finding out more about this book, your other books, all the things, how do we discover you on the web?
Okay, great. So probably the easiest place for the book, there's a website called zenmoney.net, where I persuaded the publishers to let us print some of the steps so you can get a good sample of the back third of the book is all really kind of concrete little things you can do. And I think about a third of them are in there. So readers can go to zenmoney.net and have a get a get a good feel for exactly what the book is like. Then they can find me as the $7 Millionaire on most social media. The reason I use that is because it was a nickname that my daughter came up with because we discussing how much money it required you to save every day to become a millionaire, and literally neither of us could believe it was only $7. We had to get the spreadsheet out and double check it and triple check it. And then the Maya Awards. So the MAI awards.org is the name of the awards. And if any of your listeners know any kind of great programs, projects that are doing work with money, helping kids with money, but not just kids, like adults, underserved communities, anything, we'd love to hear from them because that's what makes awards better is more entries.
And like we do with every episode, we'll make it easy. We'll have links in the description and the show notes to the websites Michael's just mentioned in the episode. It's time to bring this episode of the Sean Tabbitt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation with Michael Gilmore. Once again, our book today was The Little Book of Zen Money, A Simple Path to Financial Peace of Mind. And Michael, I want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's been wonderful to be here.